Listen to the Wealth Talks podcast and increase your financial wisdom. You will find episodes about investments, the infinite banking concept, how to fight inflation, the financial side of retirement, and financial questions Jesse asked his girlfriend. Listen to the Wealth Talks podcast on any podcast platform or watch it on YouTube. There are new episodes of the Wealth Talks podcast weekly. Search for Wealth Talks podcast online and subscribe for free.
Hello, it's your favorite president telling Todd Huff listeners about Mega Milk Protein Powder. That's what we're calling it, Mega Milk. It's protein for patriots, okay? American-made Mega Milk destroys dad bods and builds a big, beautiful wall of MAGA muscle on your entire body. So true. Don't buy protein made in China. You'll be a total disaster, a weak loser. Your workouts are winning. Drink Mega Milk. Go to MAGAmuscle.com and put some Trump in your pump. MAGAmuscle.com.
Attention, you're listening to the Todd Huff Radio Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk radio. Be advised that the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. Here's your conservative, but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
Well, that is right, my friends. You have tuned in to America's home for conservative, not bitter talk. It is my absolute pleasure to be here today, talking here about the Department of Education. We're talking about Trump's order specifically to end, amend, change the Department of Education, taking the role of education, putting it back, I would say, where it belongs, back to the states. We talked about that in great detail in the first segment. We went through the first hour of the program. We went through the order. We went through Secretary McMahon's statement about what's happening and so forth. We talked about some fundamental things. We talked about who has the role or the responsibility of education. We talked about the Constitution. We talked about the laboratory of the states and how it's important for each state to handle these issues as it sees fit. We talked about federalism. If you want to discuss those sorts of things, you have to go back to the previous hour to listen. But the good news is you can get that anywhere that you listen to podcasts, whether that's iHeart Radio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Just search The Todd Huff Show or go to our website, toddhuffshow.com, and check it out there. So that's where we are, my friends. That's where we were last hour. This hour, I want to dig a little bit more into it. I want to play a clip from Stephen Miller. He's on Fox News, adding some additional commentary here, giving some additional framework. There's a whole bunch I want to go through here. I want to talk a little bit about teachers. I want to talk a little bit about the amount of money that it is. And I want to just share some personal experiences I have from being a member of a school board. My experience with teachers, of course, I was a student in public schools a long time ago. I saw that side of it. I saw the school board side. I served as a substitute teacher for a while, again, years ago. So I feel like I have a pretty good perspective here. I don't understand it all, but I certainly have my experiences and my thoughts as to why this is better. This solution by Trump is better than what we had previously. And that's what I want to talk about today. If you want to be part of the conversation as well, I welcome you. Email todd@toddhuffshow.com, or you can text 317-210-2830. Thoughts, questions, feedback, yes. Always be sure to include the appropriate amount of adoration and praise, which I have to tell you might be significantly more than you first deem necessary. So that's where we're headed. Before we do that, my friends, if you love seafood, real, authentic, genuine seafood, straight from the waters of Alaska nonetheless, you've got to check out Kenai Fish. It's a family-owned company delivering wild-caught Alaskan seafood straight to your door. There's no middleman. There's no supermarkets, none of that stuff. They've got salmon, sockeye, coho, and king that's harvested from the pristine pristine Kenai and Castleoff rivers. They've got vacuum, it comes in vacuum sealed, I should say, packages. It's shipped via next day air to lock in that fresh, just caught flavor. But it doesn't just stop there, my friends. They've also got halibut from the Gulf of Alaska. It's mild, it's sweet, it's perfect for any recipe. And they've got shellfish, king crab, snow crab, scallops. It's the best Alaska has to offer. Kenai Fish is about quality, sustainability, and supporting hardworking fishermen. Go to KenaiFish.com today. Use promo code Todd. You'll save 15% off your purchase. Again, KENAI, KenaiFish.com. Let me give you that website again. KENAI Fish, KenaiFish.com. That's how you spell Kenai, by the way. KENAI. You'll taste the difference, and my friends, I think you'll be hooked as well. That pun is totally intended. All right. So, I mentioned I have a soundbite, a clip from Stephen Miller. He was on Fox News. He was explaining a little bit more of the context, the background, the reasoning, the rationale, what we're up against when we look at the federal Department of Education. And he's explaining, articulating some of the problems that exist and why this needs to be returned to the states. Here he is.
Well, as we know, the Department of Education here in Washington, D.C., is overwhelmingly staffed by radical left Marxist bureaucrats who are in every way hostile to Western civilization, hostile to American interests, and hostile to our founding documents and culture. And so they are using their position and influence inside the Department of Education to try to force agendas like radical gender ideology, like critical race theory, like diversity, equity, and inclusion, and all kinds of anti-America curricula and policies on the American people, on our students, on our children. So it's taking away from parents the ability to control and direct the education of their own kids, of their own families. So what we're going to do under President Trump's leadership and direction is to return that authority to the greatest extent possible to the local level where parents can control outcomes, while at the same time making sure that no federal funds are used to support racism, to support gender ideology, or support other ideas and principles that are offensive to the American taxpayer.
All right. So, there you go. That's a summary. Now, you would have heard him use phrases and words there that, as a conservative, as a person who cares about limited government, the Constitution, freedom, liberty, the American way of life, use some terms there that would have set your spidey alarm system going off all over the place. Radical leftist Marxists that are in the Department of Education. Now, a couple of things. Number one, when he's talking about the Department of Education here, he's talking about the people who are running it at the federal level. And folks, I know that some people are still resistant to this, what I'm about to say. I used to be. I didn't used to want to believe this stuff. I didn't used to want to believe, as a 21-year-old kid who was listening to Rush Limbaugh at the time, I didn't want to believe that this situation was as dire as it was. I didn't want to believe that people were in positions of power in this country who did not believe in the principles established by the Constitution. I didn't want to believe that there were people who were quite literally Marxists and communists. I know it sounds extreme. I know it. I know it does to some people. But the question is, look at what are they doing in these positions? Instead of just getting upset at the terms, let's look at who is actually running these organizations. And there's a lot of reasons to say what he is saying, Stephen Miller, is absolutely correct. And it's one of the strategies of the left. So, by the way, let me say this too, just as a personal note. I've got, I struggle with seasonal allergies. And in the winter or in the fall, I'm inevitably hit by something that affects my vocals. In the spring, it's more of an inconvenience, itchy eyes and all that sort of stuff. But it does hit my, it gets into my throat, some of the allergies. So you might have to bear with me a little bit as I tend to that. But it's hitting me during this kind of season of extremes as the weather changes from winter to the warmer spring, and there's buds and blooms and all that great stuff, by the way. It's just, it affects my allergies. So anyway, Stephen Miller actually hits on something that we talk about here. And I have come up with a phrase called the 7 pillars of propaganda. I believe that there are 7 pillars of power within our civilization, our society. And having these pillars in and of themselves is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just when they are occupied by these radical leftists, by the people that Stephen Miller just mentioned in that soundbite I played, listening or allowing those folks to run these pillars and to use propaganda is a powerful tool to manipulate, mislead, deceive the American people. And so there's 7 pillars. I'll just tell you the 7 pillars first. The pillars of our society that have been taken over by the radical left are government, academia, entertainment, media, science, woke business, and big tech. Now there's groups and examples of what each of those mean. For example, politicians, the bureaucratic state, the dark activity of politics all falls under the government's purview or that particular pillar. Academia, we've got public schools, we've got woke teachers, we've got woke administrators, we've got woke curriculum. We've got secret actions that have taken places. We've got the things that are happening on colleges and universities. We've got safe spaces. We've got all that sort of stuff. All that sort of stuff. White guilt and all of this constant talk about racism and privilege and all of these things. Just the constant nonstop assault. And I could go through each of the other pillars to give you examples, but you get the idea. And so what happens is, okay, you have to take a step back and you say, the people, when power is centralized at the federal government level, it attracts people to the positions who like that. For example, so my son wants to be a pilot. And there are certain characteristics of the people who want to be pilots, just statistically, who they are. There's more males who are interested in piloting than females. It doesn't mean that there aren't females. It doesn't mean that there can't be female pilots. It just means that naturally it attracts certain people that like whatever it is. My son likes he's been mesmerized with the science of flight ever since we flew to Florida back in, 7-8 years ago, something like that. And now he's getting ready to go to flight school. He's got a simulator. That's the path he wants to take. And so every career path, every type of job, every field attracts people that have certain characteristics. Now, there's always exceptions to the rule, but there are certain characteristics of our personalities, of our interests, of the types of people we are that attracts us to these types of positions. And I would say to you, the people who are attracted to these roles at the federal level where they can actually have the power and authority to control in the worst sense, but to influence at best what's happening at the classroom level, the things curriculum-wise that are happening, the people who are, you can see, it doesn't take a huge leap to see that the people who understand that the government has an opportunity here to get the ideas, the new woke ideas, if you want to call it that. By the way, I didn't come up with the term. Some people get mad at the term. I didn't make it up. They did. The left made this up. But you can see how this is a great avenue to attract people who want to change our society rapidly. Let's teach the youth things that are, fundamentally opposed to the things I don't like as a leftist in our government and our society. And so this is an avenue that they have. And so Stephen Miller is right. It becomes a hotbed for people who want to use that position of power and authority to, at best, influence and at worst, control what's happening on the classroom level, what's getting funded, the things kids are being taught. There are some people, and I know there's going to be resistance to this, but there are some people who are in education who have been attracted to the field of education. This is not everybody. There are some wonderful teachers. I've got that I want to get to today. I want to talk about some great teachers that I had. There are some wonderful teachers, but it doesn't take many people in these positions of power and authority to really cause havoc on the American educational system. And I would say that we have been dealing with that havoc. They have wreaked that havoc on our system, on our children. That has been what has happened. But it attracts these leftists. It does. It absolutely attracts these leftists. Some people you can see if you say, look, I don't like this country is founded. I don't like our Judean Christian heritage. I want people to know how terrible this country is. You can see how people who are motivated by that might be attracted to these sorts of positions. And that's what Stephen Miller is saying there. And that's who's running this Department of Education. They are radical. They are, in many cases, Marxist. They are, in many cases, woke. They are, in many cases, anti-American. Why would we give them the keys to education of our children? Now, I would maintain, why do we give it to anybody even if they don't believe those things at the federal level? It's not efficient. It's not the role and responsibility of the federal government. It's been proven not to work. We've done nearly a half-century case study on what happens, and it hasn't improved things. If anything, it's made them worse. The Department of Education is broken, and so that is where we are. More to say about this. Let me pause, my friends, and just say to you that there's very few things that are more important than a good night's sleep. It's where we recharge our battles to fight our batteries, I should say, to fight the battles of the day, whether it's raising families, whether it is teaching in a public school, whether it's working, running a business, being in sales, having a blue-collar job, a white-collar job, whatever we're doing, it's how we recharge. And it's also how we have the energy to continue to fight for what's right in this great country. MyPillow has everything you need when it comes to sleep and comfort. They've got patented pillows. They've got luxurious towels. They've got unbelievably comfortable slippers. Oz has them on right now as I speak. These products are also made in the good old US of A. You're not just buying comfort. You're supporting American jobs, American values, and, my friends, an American patriot and one who loves this country with Mike Lindell. He's the owner of MyPillow. It's a win-win. Here's the deal. Go to MyPillow.com. Use promo code Todd. You're going to get savings on the products listed there. Do not wait, whether it's for your sleep, your mornings, or just a little extra comfort. MyPillow has you covered. Again, MyPillow.com, promo code Todd. Comfort, my friends, that you can believe in. That's where you would go for that. All right, so let us now continue. What I want to get to, I want to get to next. I've got another soundbite here. I'm actually going to play it. I am going to play it because he interviews a teacher. This is from NBC or MS. I think it's NBC. NBC News is not. I'm sorry. This is MSNBC. This is Rachel Maddow. I had another clip from NBC. This is Rachel Maddow covering a story, passing it to a local journalist who is talking, doing a report on teachers who are protesting at the state capitol. Now, there's state involvement in education, as you know. There's federal involvement with the Department of Education. Trump and his administration are trying to make it less of that and more of things at the state level. You got protests, you've got anger, you've got confusion, you've got lies, you've got all sorts of stuff out there. And the teachers are protesting at the state capitol in Denver, Colorado here. in this report. And I want you to hear, there's an interview with the teacher. I want you to hear the report. I want you to hear Rachel Maddow talk about the percentage of schools that had been closed in Colorado because, well, they went to this protest and so forth. I just want you to listen to this. I want to talk specifically about teachers after this because he has the journalist here has a teacher on here, and I just want to talk about these things because at the teacher level, there's some things we need to discuss as well. So here you go.
Today, nearly 80% of schools in Colorado are closed because teachers are at the state capitol protesting newly proposed cuts to public education. The Denver Teachers Union says they're worried the new proposal could cause layoffs and balloon class sizes, hurting students in the process.
We are seeing and hearing a lot. Thousands of teachers expected here on the steps of the Colorado State Capitol, and you're getting a glimpse of just a few of them right now. They are still showing up as we speak because they're protesting specifically two things: how schools are funded in the state of Colorado and millions that were promised last year that are now in limbo because the state of Colorado is facing a $1.2 billion budget shortfall. And as we kind of walk around this crowd here, you're going to see educators from all over the entire state here, Chris, that have come up to make sure that their voices are heard.
It's scary.
Okay, I'm going to get to this interview with the teacher in a minute. But so, friends, here's what's happened. And this goes, I don't care where you live in the country, this is almost certainly the circumstances for you. This country has been fiscally mismanaged for a long time. This country has put way too much of a burden on the people who are producing a revenue stream for the federal government and for the states. And the taxes are high. Inflation has hit the prices of everything. By the way, these things are improving. The prices of eggs, which the left had been clamoring about for a long time, is now coming down quickly and dramatically. You won't hear the left talking about that, at least right now, because this problem has appeared to, the solution has been found when it comes to getting a higher production of eggs out. But anyway, people have felt the squeeze. And so states have shortfalls in some cases. Education is one of the top things that states spend money on. In fact, I'll talk a little bit about my state on the other side of the break. So, but there's just a pinch. There is a pinch, and I'm going to have to hold this interview off what this teacher says until after the break as I looked at the clock. But there's a pinch, and there are realities. And I'm going to say something that might upset some people, and I don't intend it to upset you. Listen to the words that I'm saying here. People who are in the public sector, who have a state job, a government job, in many instances, you're the last to feel it. You're the last to feel the impact because states want to refuse to cut budgets. The federal government wants to refuse. You look at how much they kicked and screamed with these Doge cuts in Washington, D.C. But the people who feel it are the people out there working in the private sector, the business owners, the people who are on the point of the spear, who are dealing with these things as they happen in real time. We dealt with them from the point of the spear 5 years ago. In a lot of ways, it's still not trickled down to the government, to the state level. And now there's a whole myriad of issues that have been created over the last 4 years that are coming home to roost. And so now there's problems. There's not funding. We're doing stupid stuff with the funds that we have. Trump's trying to fix this. But again, a lot of this is already water under the bridge. So that's the realities that we're dealing with. The reality that I'm dealing with right now is that I'm up against the break. So sit tight. Back here, my friends, in just a minute.
Listen to the Wealth Talks podcast and increase your financial wisdom. You will find episodes about investments, the infinite banking concept, how to fight inflation, the financial side of retirement, and financial questions Jesse asked his girlfriend. Listen to the Wealth Talks podcast on any podcast platform or watch it on YouTube. There are new episodes of the Wealth Talks podcast weekly. Search for Wealth Talks podcast online and subscribe for free.
Tired of store-bought produce? Ever dreamed of growing your own healthy food but worried about space? Exo Hydroponics is a perfect solution. Exo Hydroponics is a family-owned business run by a mother and daughter team. Their innovative XO Tower lets you grow up to 28 plants indoors or out using less than 2 square feet. Visit exotowers.com today and start your journey to growing fresh organic food at home. That's exotowers.com.
Hello, it's your favorite president telling Todd Huff listeners about Mega Milk Protein Powder. That's what we're calling it, Mega Milk. It's protein for patriots, okay? American-made Mega Milk destroys dad bods and builds a big, beautiful wall of MAGA muscle on your entire body. So true. Don't buy protein made in China. You'll be a total disaster, a weak loser. Your workouts are winning. Drink Mega Milk. Go to MAGAmuscle.com and put some Trump in your pump. MAGAmuscle.com.
Welcome back, my friends. By the way, this program is brought to you in part by our friends at Easton University. My friends, Matt Easton, let me ask you, are you where you want to be if you're in sales? You know, we're about to talk about how, we just talked about being on the point of the spear. In sales, you're on the point of the spear, at the point of the spear. When things are going well in the economy, you can feel that immediately, quickly. When things are going tough, you can experience that as well. I do think things are improving, but either way, whether it's good or bad, you want to have the best skills that you can possibly have to close more deals and make more money. That's where Matt Easton and Easton University comes in. They are here to help you with a training system, a coaching system to make you a better, more productive salesperson. This isn't a cookie cutter training. There is coaching sessions. There is curriculum as well that is practical, that is helpful, that is insightful, designed to sharpen your skills, my friends. If you sign up to become a student at Easton University, you're going to get a free welcome call with Matt where he's going to walk you through your specific and particular challenges to help get you ramped up and improving in sales as quickly as possible. So to do that, you got to go to toddhuffshow.com/Easton. That's EASTON, toddhuffshow.com/Easton to get your subscription to Easton University and to get your one-on-one call with Matt. Again, do not let this opportunity pass by, my friends. Invest in yourself. You are worth it, and there's a lot of good that can come from this. A lot of good that'll come from improving your sales skills. toddhuffshow.com/Easton to find out more and to take advantage of that specific offer to those of you as a listener of this program. All right, so let's go back to this interview, this soundbite. This journalist is on the ground in Denver, Colorado, talking about what's happening in education around the country, but he's particularly, specifically, he's in Denver, Colorado. So I'm queuing this back up. Here we go. All right, that being said, he's talking with one of the teachers at the protests in Denver, Colorado.
It's coming from the state and from the federal, so we just don't feel like there's any solace. We're kind of in this pincer movement of like, where is this funding going to come from?
Do you feel your classroom could be compromised?
Absolutely. We do absolutely the best that we can with what we've got, but it's harder and harder, and we've got less and less.
And in response, Colorado Governor Jared Polis is saying
I'm just going to pause it there because I want to talk specifically about that. This clip runs on a little bit longer, but this teacher said that it's scary. I don't know where the funding is coming from because we're feeling it from both sides. We're feeling it on the federal level with Trump's elimination or the changes at the Department of Education that are coming. Of course, by the way, all this stuff is going to be challenged legally. This is the way that it's going to go for this entire administration. And Trump's trying to get all this to go to the Supreme Court as quickly as possible. All of these injunctions and things that are happening where he's going to say, look, let's just get this figured out because these are strategies and tactics that are designed to kind of run the clock out here. We've got 4 years. I've seen how this happens. I've seen how it happens when they use the powers they have to engage in lawfare against me, Trump would say. I've seen how they play these games. I've watched this since I've been in politics in particular. I know their strategy. Let's put this on the fast track. Let's get these things decided because we are going to continue to push for what the American people want. These are popular things, by the way. And listen, whatever is going to be cut, there's going to be commotion like this. But I have to say, I mean, he's going after the Department of Education first, which is where there's a lot of people that are tied to that. So you're going to hear a lot of people that are being vociferous about it, and they have a right to be. That's fine. But tell me why. Tell me why this is bad. Tell me why this is dangerous. Tell me why this is wrong. Tell me why you put so much faith in the Department of Education, because it has failed and failed miserably. Now, I want to talk about the teachers here. He said a couple of things. He was questioning where the funding was going to come from. Then he made this statement, and I'm going to paraphrase it here. We do absolutely the best we can with what we've got, but we're getting less and less. That's the sentiment, the statement. I want to mention some experiences I had on the school board. I was on the school board of my local community from 2000 until 2004. I was a member of that school board as a young man. I learned a lot. I learned how many things were tied to funding, how little, unfortunately, school boards could decide if you wanted funding, and if you didn't get the funding tied to the program, how are you going to get it? I mean, you're going to do a bunch of bake sales or what? It was just an interesting experience for me. I learned some of the things that were wrong. I also learned how the teachers union worked. Now we had a relatively reasonable union here. Sometimes we had good reps to deal with. Sometimes we, had people that were a little harder to deal with. But every year, back when I was on the board, we would get what was called new money. And the new money, we basically said, here's how much money we've got. How do you want this allocated? Do you want it to go to salaries? Do you want it to go to, health care? You basically tell us. I mean, that's just the way that it worked. And of course, whatever money there was, it wasn't enough. But the problem is we didn't control the revenue stream and the money. That's not how funding worked. And so basically they had the money that, they had access to the new money. They just needed to tell us where they wanted to allocate it. But I always found this interesting. There is a built-in, at least at the time I was there, I imagine it's still this way today. There's a built-in 1% increment to teachers' salaries in my district. I don't know if this was just our district, if this was just the way that it's done, but this was the case, a 1% increment. So every year, a teacher's salary would raise 1%. Now you could say it's just 1%, whatever, but the point is it's 1%. Then you would get the new money and you would negotiate, whatever. They wanted to put this towards salaries. Let's say it added up to a 3% raise for everybody. So you had a 3% raise. They would announce that as just a 3% raise. But in reality, it was a 4% raise because there was a built-in 1% increment. So the real raise that every teacher got was 4%. But they would say it was only 3%. It's always the positioning and the messaging. And a lot of this stuff, where does it come from? It comes from the statewide or federal teachers associations talking to them about how to communicate, how to message, how to put pressure on the district and all this sort of stuff. And that part of the process, while we had reasonable people running, in many cases, the union, in fact, one time it was a person I really liked, but every once in a while we had some difficulty with that. So I point that out to say there's always games that could be happening behind the scenes. Know who's funding this stuff. By the way, 80% of the schools apparently were closed in Colorado yesterday. Did the teachers get paid? Did the teachers get paid for that? The parents had to make accommodations for their children. Some parents probably had to take off of work. Students didn't get to learn that day because they're at this. I'm not saying they shouldn't be able to protest. I'm just saying don't sit here and lecture me as though you're the only one that cares about students when you didn't show up to do your job that day. I'm just pointing that part of the process out. So So there's all that, the shenanigans, there's the messaging, the posturing, the optics of these things that's going on, and you have to remember that there's a strategy at the core of all of that, number one. Number two, I talked about there being a problem. Well, I talked briefly last segment about, hey, there is a problem with just overall taxes, government spending, inflation. Families are pinched. A lot of teachers haven't felt the pinch because they're in a state, a public position, and governments resist cuts to the last, as long as humanly possible. And so it wasn't until these things were happening with Doge, it wasn't until, we're 5 years after COVID now. Some people in the private sector took it on the chin. Business owners, businesses vanished that never came back. A lot of this is just the buildup of that reality and the American taxpayer not being able to to handle any more of the burden. States have shortfalls in some cases. Budgets are not where they need to be, and they're forced to deal with this. Now, I'm going to tell you numbers of how much money states on average spend. I'm going to tell you specifically about what my state spends, Indiana, on education at the state and local, the state level. And I want you to remember this. Remember the tax burden and remember how much money is being spent on education. Remember all this anger and rage. Remember the outcomes that have been created by the Department of Education. And ask yourself why the other part of the story isn't being told. That's what we're going to do on the other side of the break. I'm out of time here this segment. Sit tight, my friends. Back in just a minute.
Listen to the Wealth Talks podcast and increase your financial wisdom. You will find episodes about investments, the infinite banking concept, how to fight inflation, the financial side of retirement, and financial questions Jesse asked his girlfriend. Listen to the Wealth Talks podcast on any podcast platform or watch it on YouTube. There are new episodes of the Wealth Talks podcast weekly. Search for Wealth Talks podcast online and subscribe for free.
Tired of store-bought produce? Ever dreamed of growing your own healthy food but worried about space? Exo Hydroponics is a perfect solution. Exo Hydroponics is a family-owned business run by a mother and daughter team. Their innovative Exo Tower lets you grow up to 28 plants indoors or out, using less than 2 square feet. Visit exotowers.com today and start your journey to growing fresh organic food at home. That's exotowers.com.
Seeking natural solutions for your health and wellness? Look no further than Garden Root Remedy. We offer handcrafted herbal tinctures, salves, teas, and more made with only the highest quality organic herbs. We provide personalized consultations to help you find the perfect herbal remedy for your specific needs. Experience the power of nature's healing touch. Visit Garden Root Remedy online at gardenrootremedy.com. That's gardenrootremedy.com. Rooted in nature, blooming with wellness.
Welcome back, my friends. Final segment of this, the whole week. Time flies when you're having fun. Friends, I want to remind you, if you are tired of spending your hard-earned money at businesses that turn around and support leftist causes and leftist candidates, I've got something just for you. It's called Freedom Marketplace. It's exactly why we created Freedom Marketplace. It's something that we created here. We operate here at the Todd Huff Show. It is a free, searchable directory of businesses that share your conservative values. Businesses that have vowed not to support leftist candidates, leftist causes. There's no login required. You don't have to put any personal information in. Even if you did, we wouldn't share that, but you don't have to do any of it. There's no strings attached. It's just a place where you can find good, patriotic businesses that are pushing in the same direction as you. Check it out today at freedommarketplace.net. freedommarketplace.net. Liberty and business for all, my friends. All right, so let us now get to this last part that I wanted to get to. The amount of budgets on average, that the amount of state budgets that are spent on education. On average, states spend about 1/3 of their budgets on education. Now, this would include primary education, secondary education, and higher education. I mentioned that taxes are too high. I mentioned that Americans are tired of paying for things. that are never fixed, that are not generating results. We have problems in our public schools coming out of our ears. We've had FBI agents investigate people who voice concerns at local school board meetings. We've watched as administrators have tried to hide things that are happening in their school districts. We've watched as students have been told by administrators that they can have gender reassignment processes begin without the consent of family, parents. We've watched all of this we've watched the transgender nonsense take root. We've watched as untold things have happened in schools. It is a mess. It is a mess in every conceivable, measurable way. Americans are tired of being told that these things are never going to, being promised they're always going to be fixed, but these things never actually being fixed. So we absolutely need to change the structure of how things operate in public education. And I will say this, it is quite possible that public education is irreparably broken. But all that being said, this is where we are, and it is a step in the right direction towards trying to find solutions to these problems, putting it back to the state level. Now, my state of Indiana, buckle up if you don't know this, half of the state's budget, I think it's actually over half. You would have heard John Crane. He was a guest host on this program when I'm out. He fills in a couple times a year. He was a state senator here. I've talked with him about this. I think he told me the number was even higher. I think it was closer. I think his numbers showed it was, I could be wrong, but I recall it being in the 50s, maybe even close to 60%. So let's just take the lower number. Half of Indiana's state budget is spent on education. So when people, teachers unions and teachers go and protest and demand more money, the question is, where does it come from? Where does it come from? And by the way, why are you here? One of my big problems with this is, if you're a public employee, I drive by and I've seen these. I've seen people picketing and all this, and I think, in the past, this hasn't been recent, but I think, you're picketing in front of a community that's paying your salary, and you're saying, I don't make enough. This really bothers me, by the way. I mean, do whatever you want. Don't misunderstand. But I just think, in what other world does that sort of behavior exist? Do you, as a business owner, as a person in the corporate world, do you go outside of your customers' offices with picket signs and say, I'm not making enough money? Pay me more money for my goods and services? Is that how that works? I mean, they're the ones that agreed to collective bargaining, all this sort of stuff. This is their system. I mean, when I was on the school board, we didn't create this. This is the system that was created with their influence. Now they're unhappy with this. Now, I want to say this. Good teachers can change someone's life for the better. I know good teachers. I had some good teachers. I had Mr. Knoll was a great teacher. He was above and beyond what a teacher is even expected to do. Someone like Mr. Knoll. Or Mrs. Walton, who's recently retired from the school district. I'm reminded of Mrs. Hutzel. She was a math teacher at my school district, coming in early to help students study. And I don't know that my brother would have passed math without her taking the effort to come in and to do a study table or whatever, tutoring, whatever they called it. Some truly remarkable teachers. I've also had some not so good teachers, some average teachers. I've had some bad teachers and some terrible teachers. And if I'm being honest with you, the terrible ones when I was in high school were the ones I really enjoyed because they didn't make us do anything and it was a free-for-all in there. So obviously there's a whole bunch of problems here. And I'll tell you, as someone who's been in a school board, getting rid of a terrible teacher is not easy, especially if they've crossed the 3-year mark of achieving tenure, reaching tenure, because then it becomes virtually impossible to fire a teacher. There's a lot of things wrong with public education. That the folks in public education, they have a tough job, right? I'm not saying the job isn't tough, but there's a lot of tough jobs out there. Let me just give it to you straight. And let me also say this, that when it comes to money, public positions have been insulated from the realities the rest of us have had to deal with for some time. I'm out of time, though. I got to go. SDG.
Listen to the Wealth Talks podcast and increase your financial wisdom. You will find episodes about investments, the infinite banking concept, how to fight inflation, the financial side of retirement, and financial questions Jesse asked his girlfriend. Listen to the Wealth Talks podcast on any podcast platform or watch it on YouTube. There are new episodes of the Wealth Talks podcast weekly. Search for Wealth Talks podcast online and subscribe for free.
Hello, it's your favorite president telling Todd Huff listeners about MAGA Milk Protein Powder. That's what we're calling it, MAGA Milk. It's protein for patriots, okay? American-made MAGA milk destroys dad bods and builds a big, beautiful wall of MAGA muscle on your entire body. So true. Don't buy protein made in China. You'll be a total disaster, a weak loser. Your workouts are winning. Drink MAGA milk. Go to MAGAmuscle.com and put some Trump in your pump. MAGAmuscle.com.